Hello, good evening.
Hi, Mr. Assange. It's Rick Stengel. I'm the editor of Time Magazine, and thank you for joining us this evening.
G'day, Jeff. You're welcome.
What is the effect thus far of the latest round of leaks, and what effect do you hope to have from those leaks?
I can see that the media scrutiny and the reaction from government is uh, so tremendous that it actually eclipses our ability to understand it. And I think there's a new story appearing, a new original story appearing about once every 2 minutes somewhere on the world that Google News has managed to index. So at this stage, we can only have a feeling for what the impact is that's based upon just looking at what the tips of the waves are doing. The moving current under the surface is simply too much volume for us to even be able to see. But looking at the what we can, I can I can see that there's a tremendous um, rearrangement of feelings about many different countries. And so that will result in some new kind of harmonization. And we can see the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu coming out with a very interesting statement that leaders should speak in public like they do in private whenever they can, and that he believes the result of this publication, which makes the sentiments of many privately held beliefs public from senior political figures, will lead to some kind of increasing peace process in the Middle East, and particularly in relation to Iran. I just noticed today Iran has agreed to enter into nuclear talks. So maybe that's coincidence, or maybe it's coming out of this process, but it is certainly not being cancelled by this process.
One of the unintended consequences is the opposite effect, which is what we've seen with the Department of Defense and even the State Department here in the U.S. of trying to make secrets more impenetrable rather than less, and trying to take precautions against what has happened from happening again in the future. How do you regard that?
Well, I think that's very positive. Since 2006, we have been working along this philosophy that organizations which are abusive and need to be scared of the public eye, if their behavior is revealed to the public, they have one of two choices. One is to reform in such a way that they can be proud of their endeavors and proud to display them to the public, or the other is to lock down internally and to balkanize internally, and as a result, of course, uh, cease to be as efficient as they were. And to me, that is a very good outcome because organizations can either be efficient, open, and honest, or they can be closed, conspiratorial, and inefficient.
Are there any circumstances in diplomacy or global affairs in which you see secrecy as necessary and as an asset?
Yes, of course. I mean, we keep secret the identity of our sources, as an example, take great pains to do it. So secrecy is important for many things, but it shouldn't be used to cover up abuses, which leads us to the question of who decides and who is responsible. It shouldn't really be that people are thinking about should something be secret, but rather it should be thought who has a responsibility to keep certain things secret and who has a responsibility to bring matters to the public. And those responsibilities fall on different players, and it is our responsibility to bring matters to the public.
Now, you mentioned the public. Do you believe that the American public, in this particular instance, was either dissatisfied or unhappy with the way the U.S. government was conducting diplomacy, so that you felt compelled to expose it to them? Because it seems to me that the public is reacting negatively to a lot of this exposure of diplomatic secrets that they presumably feel was actually in their interest.
Well, I think the response by the American public has been very favorable to our endeavor. In fact, I think the State Department is going to have a hard time of it trying to spin this. It's one thing to tap into the ancient. It's one thing to talk about the need to protect this image of the innocent young soldier. It's another thing to talk about how diplomats are hard done by when they find their very privileged position in life undermined by having their lives revealed. And it doesn't seem to me that there is grassroots broad support for the behavior of diplomats, say, stealing Ban Ki-moon's DNA. So that's just something that doesn't resonate well with the average person.
Mm-hmm. How, and I know you've emailed about this, but what is your reaction to Secretary Clinton's declaration that you put lives in jeopardy, and of now the apparent attempts by the U.S. Justice Department to prosecute you? What is your reaction to that, and have you committed any crimes that they should be prosecuting you for?
Well, this sort of nonsense about lives being put in jeopardy is trotted out every time a big military or intelligence organization is exposed by the press. It's nothing new. It's not an exclusively American phenomenon by any means. It goes back at least 50 years. I'm aware of them, presumably in different forms, hundreds of years before that. So that sort of reactionary sentiment is to be fully expected. We get that on nearly every case that we do. However, this organization, in its 4 years of publishing history, we don't need to speculate, it has a history, has never caused an individual, as far as we can determine or as far as anyone else can determine, to come to any sort of physical harm or to be wrongly imprisoned and so on. That is an enviable record compared to the organizations that we are striking to expose, who literally have been involved in the causative deaths of hundreds or thousands or potentially across the course of a number of years, millions.
And how would you characterize your actions both in this latest set of leaks as well as past? I mean, would you say you're practicing civil disobedience against breaking the law in order to expose greater law breaking? Is that the moral calculus that you use to justify the leaks?
No, not at all. This organization practices civil obedience. That is, we're an organization that tries to make the world more civil and act against abusive organizations that are pushing in the opposite direction. As for the law, we have in our 4-year history had over 100 legal attacks of various kinds and in various courts, including US courts, and have been victorious in all of those matters. Mm-hmm. So if we want to talk about the law, very important to remember, the law is